The Mayor, and I'd like to have the Mayor lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I'd like to turn it over to the City Manager now.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wanted to make a few opening comments, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague in crime here, Mr. Ben Fries, with the engineering firm CPH. We've been working on this presentation for some time, trying to find the right way to approach what is an interesting situation. Because the wastewater treatment plant is just needs to be totally revamped. It's just old, it's wore out. We've kicked the can as far down the road as we can. We must go forward with a new wastewater treatment plant, in our opinion, as staff. We're out there every day operating it, and we see the problems and the issues, and we have reached the point of no return. We must do this. Plus the fact that we have to get out of the intercoastal by 2032 in terms of discharging of the water and turn the product that we are discharging into the water into a much better product, which is a higher level of reclaim. So we have two imperatives. One is the fact that the wastewater treatment plant is reaching its useful life. And number two, we have a regulatory declaration that says we have to change the way we do things. So with that, you authorized us to proceed with filing for a loan to pay for all of this last year. And since that time, it seems like that the world, when I didn't think it could go any more crazy, has gone crazier. And prices have escalated, and contractors are short, and supplies are limited, and every challenge and problem under the sun is facing us right now and right here. So we thought through that, and our team has put together a presentation on, okay, given those realities, how do we go forward? How we navigate the landscape that we find ourselves in. And fortunately, we have hired some really smart folks, and they have some great solutions and answers. And so we wanted to spend some time, because it is so complicated, we wanted to have some special time to sit and talk with you about this instead of putting it on a regular agenda and going way into the night. You know, we wanted to avoid that. We wanted to get you when you were ready to listen and had plenty of energy, and see if you could help us walk through these things. So I'm going to ask my good friend Ben to make this presentation, lay out the issues, lay out the challenges, and then allow some time towards the end of the presentation to get your feedback. And then, of course, if there's any members of the public that would like to give us some feedback. The whole objective here is, given the fact that we have to go forward, how do we control the costs? How do we make sure that the amount of money we borrow and the things that we have to do cost is done in the most cost-effective manner as we can? Because as you know, heck, just go to the gas pump. You'll see things are just out of sight. So given that fact that we have to go forward now, we can't wait any further, how do we do that? What's the best process? And we've thought through some solutions and some answers, and with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ben to lay it out for you.
Ben, first of all, we'd like to say we're very happy to see you here, considering the challenges you've had in the last 6-9 months. So welcome.
I am so glad to be back. Trust me.
Mike, just push the green button.
Oh,
Yeah.
of
course, I'm rigging colorblind too, so that didn't help. I just punched. I am glad to be here. It's been a while since I've seen everybody, and the world's turned upside down, as Mr. Whitson had said. So we need to try to figure out how we're going to navigate this, because it's not the best time to be building or purchasing anything. And as he said, with the price of fuel going up, just remember, as fuel goes up, so does anything PVC, and we got lots of PVC. And it's not just the cost. Sometimes you just can't find the material, or it's going to take forever to get. I'll give you an example. Johnny has a generator at the treatment plant. We may have to put another generator in because of all the infrastructure we're going to put in. As of today, it takes 62 weeks to get a generator. Now, that's one problem. The next problem is, well, now, let's say the contractor could have finished the job in 52 weeks. Now we got to pay him for another 10 weeks to hang on and pay his general conditions while he's waiting for this generator. So the costs are just out of control. So we've come up with sort of a strategic plan. We want to present it. We need your help and assistance in trying to figure out which way we want to go. There's some avenues that we can do. So with that, I guess I'll start my little presentation that I've got. Maybe, can you see any of the clicker? Oh, there we go. So, it's critical we rebuild the wastewater plant. You can't really have a city without a water or a wastewater plant. So, as Mr. Whitson said, we're in dire need of rehabilitating that. It's been a long time. It was originally built in the 70s. There were some upgrades in the 80s. Almost all the infrastructure has reached the end of its service life. Some of the piece of equipment we can't even get spare parts for. That's how bad it is. Any further delays, of course, in replacing the critical infrastructure of a facility is going to put us at risk of not meeting our regulatory requirements through DEP and EPA, and we could potentially cause impacts to the local environment, which we don't want to do, and we'll keep that from happening. Another stick in the mud for us is the city's required to remove all of our effluent discharge to the intercoastal waterway by January 1st of 32. Now, that seems like a long time away. But when you start to think about it, what's one way to get out of there? It's to make reclaimed water. Well, the new plant can almost make reclaimed water. We'll talk about the salt content that we had previously talked about in a minute. But let's say I could produce it today. We have nowhere for it to go. There's no infrastructure at all to get it to people or golf courses or what have you. That's the thing that takes a long time to develop. So even though that seems like a long period of time, we got to get moving. So timely completing this helps meet the city's strategic vision, the goals, and preserving our community and our environment. It's critical. So with that, and I'm having... Okay. Yeah, that works. So let me give you an update where we were the last time. I talked about, well, to make reclaimed water, you can't have salt in the effluent. And we had conducted a chloride study that is now done, okay? The impacts of that chloride study were interesting. We found numerous areas where there is an incredible amount of salt water coming into the collection system. I mean, a lot of water. And one of the things I had mentioned the last time I was here was, I want to build the smallest wastewater plant possible because I don't think you need a 2 million gallon per day plant. If we can get rid of some of that water, that means we can spend less money, because why treat extraneous water coming in? We found 6 locations. I think if I remember right, 6 of them were manholes, 2 lift stations that the city is in the process of making repairs to, which will do 2 things. Reduces the salt going to the wastewater plant. It also reduces the amount of water coming to the wastewater plant. If we can see that reduction in water, then the wastewater plant size can be smaller and we can save money. That infiltration and inflow, that's the extraneous water coming into the system, is allowing all that salt to come in. And right now, Johnny's plant is seeing about 1,000 to 1,300 milligrams per liter of salt. We can't have any more than 200 if we want to make reclaimed water. That's a huge reduction. And a wastewater plant is not designed to remove salt. So that's sort of the problem that we have. getting rid of that extra flow, which the city's working on, and then we got to deal with this salt issue that could be coming up. Can you go to the next one, Penny? Okay, so the majority of our wastewater plant was built 52 years ago. There have been upgrades in the 80s. It's in poor condition, as Mr. Whitson said. A lot of the equipment has passed its service life. All right. Yep, you're in good shape. Thank you so much. We've got antiquated equipment. There's various units that are undersized. They won't even meet the hydraulic capacity we have today, and then we have hydraulic issues. Some of the infrastructure was designed inappropriately in the past, and it won't pass the flows that we need it to flow. There's a lot of corrosion on all the equipment. There's some structural damage that exists on infrastructure. There's safety issues for the operators doing some of their jobs. You've got infrastructure that is 40, 50 years old, and they're pretty much inefficient. There's a lot better ways to do things today. We have a lot of places where there's single points of failure. We've got one unit. If that goes down, we are not treating wastewater in the city of Flagler Beach. That's a huge problem that we got to overcome. As we've talked about before, we have sludge drying beds to dry the sludge. And, you know, when it rains, it re-wets the sludge and we have to start all over again. That's they've been doing that for thousands of years, but we need to go to something that's much more effective. So this is a list of what I presented the last couple times I was here. These are the improvements that we're looking to do at the treatment plant. A new master lift station to lift the wastewater as it comes in up to the highest point in the plant so it flows by gravity the rest of the way. A new screening system and grit removal. Flow equalization basin so there aren't surges of flow through the treatment plant throughout the day. A biological or BNR treatment system that will allow us to produce the highest quality product that a wastewater plant can. It'll also produce potentially a reclaimed water. Got some clarifiers are going to be installed and associated pumping systems. Filters are required if we're going to create reclaimed water. That's a requirement of DEP through the Florida Administrative Code, new digester. There's our sludge dewatering system that I'll talk about in a minute. We've got to dechlorinate the water before it goes to the intercoastal, and then we've got all this electrical work to do at the treatment plant. That sounds pretty simple. That is a complex process. So let's look at some of the short-term and long-term goals and challenges. Goal number one, we need to get in the reclaimed water production business. That'll help us get out of the intercoastal. So the proposed improvements that I've gone through here just a minute ago and in the past will provide the capability to produce reclaimed water. Remember, the one thing that's going to kill us right now is the salinity. Got to get that out. So challenge number one is there's a high salt content in the raw wastewater, more than 1,000 milligrams per liter. And it's, the treatment plant, no matter what treatment plant we have out there that we could put in, isn't going to remove that salt ion. Reclaimed water chloride concentration need to be less than 200 milligrams per liter, otherwise it'll kill turf grass or any ornamentals. So we got a lot of work to do there.
So
it can be done.
Right now we're at 1,300. We've got to go to 200.
So,
Can I pause you for 1
of
second?
course you can.
It doesn't like doing two things at one time here. So I'm just having to play. Get back. It was saying it was over. The video was over. Okay.
I'll start, it'll make it easier. There you go. Okay, so challenge one is we got to get rid of the salt. Resolution, there's two things we can do. We can reduce the salt content by, number one, trying to get it out of your collection system. That sounds fantastic. We're getting money from St. John's to do a lot of slip lining, but the problem is that could take 5 to 15 years because you're doing a little piece this year and then a little piece next year and a little piece of the year after that. We need it out as soon as possible. Okay, and in my own heart of hearts, you can do all the slip lining you want. I think all of the salt's coming in the laterals between the person's home and the street. I think that's where all of the salt's coming in. And right now, that's not what we're slip lining. We're proposing to potentially do that, but now you're getting on people's property. That's going to take a long time to do. The other option we have is to put in like a reverse osmosis unit. That'll take care of it, like 3 minutes.
Just a quick note, St. John's gave us the first grant to begin the slip lining of the laterals, but that was just this year, so.
So the other option is put a reverse osmosis unit in, okay? And I've I've got a skid all laid out to do it. Here's the issue. We can put a skid in today and reclaim water, but we have nowhere for it to go except for the intercoastal. And it's going to take a while to develop those disposal sites to be able to send the reclaim there. So the thought process right now is if we're going to go down that road, you notice I've got their cost and who pays. I think we should put in, when we get to that point, we're not there yet, put in a small RO skid in a little metal building to do maybe 50,000 gallons a day. He's got 650,000 gallons of wastewater to get rid of every day. There's no reason to put in a 600,000 gallon RO unit there because we're still sending it to the intercoastal. Why take the salt out? We're putting it back in the intercoastal. And then what we'll do is add additional RO skids as time goes on, and we let developers or anybody that's going to tie to the system help us pay for that through infrastructure cost.
And what's an RO skid?
Reverse osmosis.
Reverse osmosis,
So
got it.
if a lot of cities around the country that pull out of the ocean, they use a reverse osmosis. They're pulling the same salt out that we need to pull out to make reclaimed water.
Okay, got it, thank you.
Can I ask you a question too? So where do we go with the salt? Like, where does that salt go at that point?
Interesting, and that's a great question. So right now, the effluent from that treatment plant blends with the material coming from the water plant, their RO concentrate, and it goes into the intercoastal. The rule says we have to take the wastewater out. You can still put the concentrate from the water plant's RO right back in the intercoastal, which makes no sense to me, but if they can do it, we'll put that concentrate right in there also. It's a lot smaller stream than 650,000 gallons of water every day. But until you develop a large enough database of users, let's do it in small increments. 50,000 the first time, maybe 100,000 the next time. But, you know, with the gardens doing some development, you're only talking about what, 300 or so homes? They're going to use 10,000 gallons a day at the most. So there's no reason to spend a lot of money until we need to, and then find the right way for somebody to help pay for that. Now, it could be the people that are going to use it. I can guarantee you we can get money. This gentleman can help us to get money if we have a plan from the state. And that's one of the action items we're going to talk about tonight is we got to have a plan. I can go to St. DEP and say, we're going to do reclaimed water throughout the city. And they're going to go, that's great. Until you have a plan, we can't give any money. So that's where we have to go. And it's going to be a long-term investment because we can't just start throwing pipes all over the city. We got to figure out, let's do the low-hanging fruit first, and then we'll deal with the more difficult parts later. So, I mean, we've got things we can do, and now we have to deal with the challenges to get them done. Salt is the big thing. That's the obstruction to us doing reclaim. The treatment plant will do everything except for remove that salt. All right, challenge number 2, we got to find where we're going to put all this water. And it might not be the first place we all think it's going to be. Okay, there's no system out there. We are one of the few cities of your size that has no reclaim system or reclaim water production. We got to start from square one, and it's going to take a while to get there, but we can get there. So what we need to do, the resolution to the second problem, is a phased reclaim water distribution and disposal system and a realistic plan. We need to develop a reuse master plan that we can develop. You would approve that master plan, and then once we have the master plan done, we can start going to all these regulatory agencies. Edgar will help us with that to get the money to do this. We're going to need help, but they won't help us at all until we have a plan. That's the first thing we got to get done. We got to get this plan developed. Now, mind you, I've listed some things in there. You could irrigate a golf course or the wastewater plant or parks. The low-hanging fruit is not the golf course. That's where I want to put the water. Problem is, it is so far away from the wastewater plant, we have to put in over 7 miles of pipe to get there and go under the intercoastal. Okay, now that's the best place to put it, but that costs the most. So we need to think of what's close. So I put the wastewater plant. Let's park as much water. Let's irrigate his. He's going to hate me for that because he's going to cut a lot of grass. But we got to pull water out of the intercoastal little bits at a time, and we need to find stuff that's close. There's a park right across 100. John Anderson is where some development could occur. We know the gardens is going in there. We need to make them take some. We need to look at those and then develop that plan to go get somebody else's money to help us pay for this stuff. Okay? Goal number 2. Goal number 1 was create reclaimed water. Goal number 2, we're required by the state to get out of the intercoastal waterway. Okay, so Senate Bill 64 requires us to get out by January 1st of 32. Okay, not a problem. We submitted our plan on October 29th of 2021 in accordance with the regulation. And yours is one of the only ones that has not been approved by DEP. It has nothing to do with you. It has nothing to do with the plan. It has to do with the people in Jacksonville. So I've sort of circumvented them, and it'll be approved this week by Tallahassee. Okay, they don't like the idea that I'm not telling them exactly where we're going to irrigate. Well, until you show me the money, I can't tell you where I'm going to irrigate. I've told them golf courses, wastewater. They want a specific layout, and until somebody shows the city, we're going to help you fund it. I can't give a definite answer. You can't commit yourself to it yet. They didn't like that. So challenge 1, we got to get out of the intercoastal waterway by January 1st of 32, and we have no system in place to do any of that today. There's problem number 2. We can resolve that. Again, we need a phased reuse master plan. We're not going to do it all at once. There's not enough money to do it all at once, but we're going to do it like every other city I've ever worked with when I started doing this in 1990. You could do a little bit, then you extend it every year, and you get some St. John's money, you get some DEP money. Edgar will write you a check for $1 million, I'm sure, out of his bank account to do some of that. I didn't hear anything, so I'm not sure about that.
Was enough.
But we're going to stage this thing. But I got to have a plan for you to be able to, and Edgar to be able to go to the pots of money that exist to be able to help us get that money. It's there to do it. I think you've got a good chance of getting money because you got to get out and you're starting from square one. So that's an issue. So the first action item we've got to get started on is the development of a master plan. We got to develop this plan, and it's going to be a broad plan, and then we're going to have to basically dive down into it a little bit more. So I put it in there, long-term study and evaluation of what we think are the shortlisted items. For instance, I could say, we're going to park 300,000 gallons per day at the golf course. That's a fantastic plan. I got to get a geotechnical engineer out there to determine how much water the ground will soak up on a weekly basis without flooding the golf course. So we can say golf course, we can say treatment plant, we can say XYZ. Now we got to go out there and prove that that will absorb that much. Otherwise, we're going to be in trouble with the state. So it's sort of a tiered program, but we got to get started so we can get the money to get out of the intercoastal. All right, so you all approved last year an SRF loan for the wastewater treatment plant construction improvements. They approved $15.4 million, $12 million this fiscal year, and then whatever remaining amount next fiscal year, which starts July 1st. Okay, and they won't tie a number to that until you get a bid in. So let's say it came in at 17 million. They're going to go, all right, City of Flagler Beach, you got 12, you need 5 more. Do you want the other 5? You say yes or no. If you say yes, then you get 5 more. Now, we don't have to apply for it. Every year they get their money on July the 1st. So what they do is they look at all the projects that still need additional funding, and they take that out of their pot of money first, and then everybody with new projects vies for what's left. So we got that option. Now the function is going to be, how much is this crazy treatment plant going to cost us, and do we want to spend that much money, or do we look for some alternatives? So action item number 1, and I talked to Mr. Whitson about this. I've done this at 2 or 3 other utilities in the last 6 months. We need to conduct a professional rate study. And this is the reason. DEP is going to come back to you and say, all right, look, we'll give you another $5 million, $2 million, whatever it is you ask for. You got to prove you can pay it back. And they're going to want to see a capital finance plan done by a rate consultant. And the reason I say a professional rate consultant is this. I'm doing a treatment plant in Bunnell right now. They didn't hire a professional rate consultant. They hired an engineer. I shouldn't say that, but they hired an engineering firm to do that. Okay, I won't do that. That's not my forte. A professional CPA needs to do that. The engineering firm told them you need to have 3 rate increases of 12% a year for 3 straight years, and then do 3 years after that at 8%. So they went and did that, and you know, people came in with pitchforks and fire and all that kind of stuff. It was horrible. Okay, and then I came in and said, we still need to do a professional rate study because I got to prove I can pay this back. And when they did that study, they said, well, you didn't need to do all those rate increases, and you're in a better cash position than you realize. So we need to really determine where we're at, and I want to know, not that we would do it, I want to know, well, how much could the city pay back if they decided to? Is it $1 million more? Is it $100 million more? Who knows? We need to get that done. Now, the beauty of that thing is this. I've worked with these people for 35 years. They're an independent group, but I use them because they're good, they're fast, they'll work with you guys, and we can know where we're at and the impacts of what your rates are today and in the future, and how it impacts not only the treatment plant, but everything else you do. Okay?
How long does it take them to do the rate study?
Here's the nice thing. They did the capital finance plan for that SRF loan last year. They didn't spend all the money, so I got them started on this already with the money they had left over. So they're already working on it. I think they can be done in 4 weeks. Okay, the idea here is this: they're going to come up with a draft plan. They're going to tell you where you're at. They're going to have a report. You'll get a copy of that. And then they will come and do a presentation here to walk you through everything, tell you where you're at. I mean, if you've had an SRF loan before, you got certain coverages you have to meet and all this other wonderful financial stuff. They go through all that. And then they have a model. That model will now, you'll have that model. And then in 3 years, you know, a couple of years, if you decide that we better see where we're at, the environment's getting crazy out there, they can take the model, adjust it based on what your cash flows are coming in and going out, and you'll see where you are then. So I've got them started on that. It won't take, you know, we estimate the total thing's 20 grand. I think we probably need another 15 and we're good to go. So we need to get that moving only because I got to show DEP if you decide to borrow more money, you can pay it back. All right, so let me update you because here's some good news. Let me update you on the screw press grant we got. Okay, so we got an $850,000 grant last year, and Edgar helped us to acquire that for sludge dewatering improvements at the wastewater plant. It's a 50-50 match. They're going to pay $850, you're going to pay $850. We've got all that worked out. It was approved. The total expenditure for that project is $1.7 million. So I generated a grant work plan. DEP approved it. It was brought through the commission. That got approved. And right now the money's sitting there waiting to be spent. Okay, and you can see there's the timeline. Notice on that last column, I think it says 6/30/24, if I remember right. Everything's got to be done by June 30th of 24. We better be done in the next 6 months. Okay, that's a good timeline for us. Okay, so the problem is we have a lot of solids building up, sludge building up in the treatment plant. His treatment plant itself has way too much sludge. The clarifiers are about to overflow with sludge, and we're sitting with drying beds, and as the rain came through today, it wetted that sludge, and it's going to have to start drying all over again. So I went to DEP, and I said, okay, well, here's the problem we got. Unless we can get the sludge out of here, he could overflow one of his tanks. And if it does, it's going to go on the ground, it's going to go over that wetland and cause a problem with the wetland. And then from the wetland, it's going to go right into the intercoastal. I said, I don't have the time, and the city doesn't have the time to go out and develop a set of engineering plans and specifications, go out and bid it, wait 30 days for that, and then go through the 2-month process. We'll lose 4 months. I need this thing done in an emergency condition right now before we have an issue at the plant. And they said, okay, what do you want us to do? And I said, I'm going to give you 2 options. Hear me giving DEP 2 options. Number one, I want to go out to the 3 largest screw press manufacturers, get quotes from them for a 2-page spec. Everybody, here's what you need to provide as a screw press. Give me a price, 3 days. Then whichever one has the lowest price, we'll do it. That was option 1. That's not the option I wanted. Option 2, I want to piggyback on an existing contract where somebody else bid screw presses. It was competitively bid, and I can just go ahead and take that manufacturer and order a screw press tomorrow. They said, we're happy with either one. Go for it. So I have a piggyback PO from the city of Sanford, Florida, where they competitively bid 5 different manufacturers of screw presses. It's a nice price for us, for the screw press, and DEP is willing to go ahead and sign off today on it, okay? That gets me the screw press. It's 20 weeks to build one from the time we give them a set of approved shop drawings, okay? So that's still probably 28 weeks from now. We need to get that thing ordered for one reason. I can't afford to have you guys paying any more because next week stainless steel costs go up or something else goes up and the price just keeps doing this. None of the stuff you'll see tonight, you have, I have, Mr. Whitson has, Johnny, anybody in this room has any control over. If fuel prices go up, everything goes up. Okay, some of the equipment we're going to get is going to come from Germany. You can imagine what a shipping container cost compared to 2 years ago to get stuff here, let alone now putting it on a flatbed and getting it here from Washington or Atlanta or wherever. Okay, so I have the quote. I sent it to Mr. Whitson and Johnny this afternoon and said, please review this. If you're good with this, you've already approved the grant. They've already approved us doing this. We can order this thing and get the process going. I don't want to see any sludge hitting the ground, and the sooner we get it moving, the better. Second problem we have is, well, now we got to...
It would make me feel better before I did that to know that I had some support for that instead of just kind of going off and spending that kind of money.
DEP doesn't want to see any type of environmental damage. They understand the issue that we have. They've been here before, so they're helping. They do this from time to time to help out communities, typically smaller communities, and I think that they've done us a favor with that. That just gets us a screw press. Now somebody's got to put it in.
The prices that you're mentioning are the prices from a year ago.
From them, yes. They've held their price.
And so they're married to those prices?
Yep.
Okay.
I have it in writing today. Now, I didn't go back and say this quote is good for 14 minutes. You know how that works. Yeah. They're holding that price as long as we order it within the next 30 days. And I said, if everybody's good with this number, and I am, then we're going to order it in the next week.
And the price you speak of is 1.7?
The price of the screw press is $350,000. And that's also including ancillary equipment. The 1.7 is, I got to build infrastructure for it. I've got to put some manholes in the ground to take the water back to the front of the treatment plant. There's pumps, there's other things. 1.7 is the total for everything. The longest lead time items of screw press, we got to get that thing ordered.
Okay.
And yes, that bid was 2 years ago, and they're holding the price for me.
Okay.
That's a great question. We'd probably be at 450 right now. All right, so, sir.
We did your first option, the one that you said was less desirable, where you go with 3 different folks. And one of the things you would consider, I would assume, be lead time.
Yep.
Do you feel comfortable that if we were to go with the first option, which is reach out to 3 different folks, we could beat that 20-week time?
Okay, so I can tell you the answer to that because I know the answer to that. I just bid a screw press job. The company that we're getting the quote from for $350 has the lowest price. They have the most units in the U.S., and I can get it here faster than anybody else. They're actually half the price of the next competitor. The next competitor is around $720,000. So yeah. Now, mind you, I think I can get it here a little bit earlier because I know the president of that company, so he's going to help me sort of move it up the chain a little bit because of the issues we have here. So I think we can cut 4 weeks out of it, at least. Sooner the better. We're hitting rainy season, and his sludge doesn't dry that well when it's wet and humid. So that's a real problem. We're doing as much as we can. He's done a fantastic job trying to keep us out of having any issues, but there's only so much we can do with the infrastructure we have. So, but that's a great question. That's a great question. All right, so that gets a screw press here. The next problem is we got to get it installed. Now, I don't want to go out and have to spend 3 or 4 months trying to get a contractor. So what I told DEP is this. I said, look, we have a contractor out there now doing some work. They're a highly reputable contractor. They've done a couple of jobs for Johnny over the last 60 days. I said, I want to use them. to install this screw press system because, again, it's an emergency. And lo and behold, they told me, we're okay with that. They're the company they're one of the companies I've worked with for maybe 30 years. They're one of the 3 most reputable, in my opinion. If I can get them to do that work and get it done quickly, and they're right up in Ponte Vedra, so they're not that far from us, that's going to help us get that thing installed. They approved the use of that contractor. Now, what I have to do between the time I order this and let's call it 16 to 18 weeks before it comes in is we've already met out there once. It was about a week and a half ago with that contractor to lay out what we're going to build. We're taking what we had initially designed with the wastewater plant and extracting it and making some modifications to reduce the price a little bit and having them build this. So it's not only that screw press, but there's going to be a metal building around it, and we've got some pumps and some other infrastructure. That's what that number comes to, totally. But I got to get a price from them to do all of the work, get that to DEP, they bless it, and we're gone. So there's good news on this is that I think we've compressed the time frame and reduced it by about 4 months to try to alleviate a problem that we have. I think that
So
would
when
be
you
helpful.
say that you have to talk to them about how much it's going to cost, do they know the parameters, the amount of money that we're talking about?
So when I had the conversation with them, I did it by Teams, I showed them the PO from the city of Sanford. And I said, this is what it's going to cost the city of Flagler Beach. We've competitively bid it. I showed them all the bids. And they said, not a problem. As long as it's that number, we're good. So then I called up the company and said, this is the number I need the screw press for.
No, I meant the contractor.
Contractor has no problem at all.
Okay.
He's, like I said, that contractor's doing 3 jobs for me in the central part of the state right now. He's done 2 jobs for Johnny, very reputable. You're comfortable with them, I'm assuming. Yeah, they're ready to go. I just need to tell them what they have to do, which I will, and I'll have it all graphically done. They put a price to it. I send that price into DEP. When they bless it, he's ready to go.
But it's within that 1.7.
Yes. Oh,
Yes.
I can't.
It fits the budget, A, and B, the most critical part is if we don't get this sludge under control, like he said, we're going to have a problem with DEP and may get shut down.
Yeah, no, I'm not challenging
so-
that. I just want to make sure that,
Yeah.
So
that I
It's like
understand.
the step number 1.
So let me answer your question in a different manner. I don't think I'll spend all that money, but I'm going to spend all that money because anything that could touch that screw press, I want this contractor to install because I want to use every bit of their money. If we only spend $1 million, we're giving away half of that back to the state. So those manholes and that pipeline to take the water that we get out of the sludge back to the head of the treatment plant, that's all tied to the sludge. It's got to go in for it. So we're going to build all that infrastructure and we're going to try to spend every penny of that so you get that free money. It's a 50-50 match for whatever we spend up to $1.7 million, not above it.
And the screw press, this was part of the original plan anyways.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes, sir. Yeah,
I've been talking about screw presses for probably
It's been a long
12
time.
years.
Yeah.
bingo.
Question, why is the company that we're going to be getting this screw press from half the price?
Okay, so the other 2 main manufacturers are German firms, and they love their stainless steel, and you pay a premium for their stainless steel. Okay, and the company name is Huber. We're actually going to put one of their pieces of equipment in, but it's not that screw press. Huber's price is $720,000 for a screw press. They have 15 or 20 of them in. The company we're going to get is PW Tech. They have 450 to 500 of them in. I have 12 screw presses going in around the state. They're all PW Tech. They've all been bid. They had a better mousetrap. And what's happening now is Huber's price is here and their price is here. Now their price is starting to come up because, hey, they're getting a lot more of these in, and you know how that works. All of a sudden, you got to get some in. Well, I know these people. I said, look, you got to do me a favor. You got to hold this price. I've got all these other jobs for you guys around the state, and they decided they would hold it for us. So we saved about $100,000 just for that, and the state actually is helping us by allowing us to use the piggyback method on a previous bid to do that. So you know, the stainless steel, I'm telling you, I've seen their screw presses. I've gone and looked at them. They're gorgeous machines. But why would I pay twice the amount of money for gorgeous stainless steel? As long as it doesn't corrode, I don't care. It's got to do the job. That's all that matters.
What is the other company using, galvanized or what?
You could use galvanized. You could use 3 or 4 stainless steel. You could use 316. Ours is going to be the 316 version of that. But yeah, I'm telling you, they have it's a beautiful machine, the Huber machine. But I wouldn't spend $400,000 more just because it looks pretty. None of us are, well, I'll see it, he'll see it. Once you guys do the grand opening of the plant, you'll see it. After that, it'll be like, just dry it, I don't care what it looks like. You know how that is. I don't need it to look pretty. It's a wastewater plant. It needs to just do its job for 15 to 20 years. Make sense? But we've got good news on that end that the state's working with us to try to expedite this because we have a potential problem at the treatment plant. All right, so as I said, and of course I can go through these quick now because I already talked about the screw press, but they gave us 2 options, piggybacking and soliciting. I think we're in really good shape. As long as Mr. Whitson is good with what I sent him today, and Johnny is, when we talk about it this week, we'll be in the level of being able to order this thing, get it moving. I think we're in good shape. I'm happy about where we're at the moment. So that's a good thing. So let's diverge a little bit. So we got to deal with this post-COVID thing. And as you know, every time you go to the grocery store or the gas station, we're living this stuff. We have no way to control this. There's multiple factors that are affecting this plant now. Now, if we'd have bid it 2 years ago, we wouldn't be here today. The thing would be operating, it'd have been a really good cost, and the interest rate would have been low. But you know where we're at today. I don't need to tell you that. One of the problems we're going to have, other than cost, is supply chain. It just takes forever to get stuff. I'll give you an example. I'm putting a gate in at a 100 million gallon per day wastewater plant. Your plant is a 1 million gallon per day. I can get that gate in 14 weeks. The electric actuator to raise it, lower it, takes 59 weeks.
Oh my God.
Now, I'm not a giant guy, but if you have to manually open it, you got to turn a wheel 920 times. After about 8 times, your arms are hurting. So I was asked at a commission meeting, I said, well, what are we going to do? I said, you're going to have to open it manually once, and then we're going to hopefully not move it again until the actuator gets in, and then it spins the wheel itself, and it opens and closes in 42 seconds. That's the world we live in. That's just it, and there's nothing we can do about it. We just have to go with the flow and decide what's important to us. So I've listed a few things here. Construction project costs are affected by the following factors, and it's going to impact our job here. Number 1, shortages of concrete. Okay, I mean, I was building treatment plants in 2007 and 8 when we saw this same thing. So I had a contractor last week that said, I can call for concrete and it'll be here in 4 days. That was about 2 months ago. Now he's calling and it's up to 1 to 2 months before the concrete shows up. So when you start to think about the concrete we have to pour and how much that impacts us, that to me is worrisome in that, not that I can't get concrete, but now the contractor has to be on site for longer and we're paying more general conditions for him to be there. That's my concern.
Think of this too, just a quick side note, the new pier is going to be concrete.
Yeah.
It doesn't get better when we talk about metals because metals are just as bad. Steel, aluminum, stainless steel, and particularly copper are out of control right now. There's a lot of stainless steel going into what we're doing because we're on the ocean side. We don't want it to corrode. We need stainless steel. And copper, that's everything electrical at the plant. And that copper is out of control right now. There's shortages of skilled labor. There are construction firms that I've known for 20 years that hate each other. They bid against one another. Now they're working together because neither one has enough staff to do these jobs. So now they have to work together. And there's not a lot of qualified people to do the work. That's the next problem. Now, that's not a problem for us, but to find a contractor at a reasonable price, that could be a huge problem. And there's a huge demand for public works projects right now. With all this money coming around and low interest rates, everybody's trying to get projects in. It's hard to get the materials and it's hard to find people to do the work. So, higher fuel costs and shipping and delivery costs is going to impact us. Inflation, I'm watching, here's the price for, a piece of equipment, and it's good for 3 days. After 3 days, I have to give you a new price. That's what we're living right now. And the worst thing right now is the interest rate. When we talked the last time, interest rates were about 0.2 to 0.25% from DEP. They're tied to the Fed. So when the Fed raises rates, the interest rate goes up on an SRF loan. I put this little tidbit in. I was talking to Mr. Whitson. The average price per gallon to build a wastewater plant in 2015 was $10 to $13 a gallon. So if you built a 1 million gallon wastewater plant, let's use 10. 10 times 1, it was $10 million to build it. Now that price has gone up to 30 to 35 gallons. I don't know how you build these plants anymore. I just don't know how you do it, particularly when you have a smaller community. I'm going to give you an example. My wife works for the city of Orlando. They have a wastewater plant project. It was $69 million. It was budgeted. They had the money. Bids came in at $105 million. 69 to 105 million. They can't build the project. Now, they've got hundreds of thousands of residents. They can't afford it. So they're trimming that down, which is what I'll talk about today. We've got to think through this strategically. Infrastructure costs, 30 to 50% increase over the last 12 months. What I don't want to do is this. I don't want to put the plan out the way it's designed today. Somebody comes back and the low bidder is $22 million, and then we try to work with them to bring it down. Because once it's bid and you have a low bidder, you'll never get the money back. Meaning if something cost $1 million and we want to take it out, you might get $600,000 or $700,000. You don't get the whole million out. You need to do that work ahead of the bid. So if we need to look at strategically where we're at financially versus how much we want to spend or cut out or phase. Maybe we have 2 phases to this construction. We do something now, and in 4 or 5 or 6 years, we do the rest of it. We need to look at that so we're not handcuffing the city with too much debt. But on the flip side, if you phase a second phase 5 or 6 years from now, it's going to cost you more than it is if you do it now. We got to play that game. So, myself, Mr. Whitson, Johnny, some other team members that are here today, we've talked about this. We're trying to come up with a strategic plan on how we're going to deal with these rising costs that we have no control over. So, number one, I think I said earlier, it's imperative that we do get that rate study started so we know where we are financially from a rate consultant. They may tell you, hey, you know what, you guys are in better shape than you think, or they might say your rates are too low, or your impact fees are too low, or whatever it's going to be. We need to know where we're at before we sign on the dotted line for that loan, because once you do, you're committed. So, interest rates are going up. Can I tell you what they are? Not yet. Your interest rate isn't locked in until you're ready to sign on the dotted line, and you can't sign on the dotted line until the project is bid. So if you bid it, it comes in at $19 million, they're going, we'll give you the $19 million, and today the rate is X, whatever that is. Now they're tied to the Fed. Fed's already raised their interest rates, and they're talking about a 0.5% increase 3 of the next 4 months. They want to get to 3 to 3.5% by the end of the year. We were talking about 0.2%. We may be up in the 2, 3, 3.5% interest, which just means you're paying more interest on that debt service than you were at 0.2. So we got to see where that plays. And again, you don't have any control over that. None of us do. Okay, so interest rates are going up. Construction costs are significantly higher. Inflation is affecting everything we do. It was 8.3% last month. And we have supply chain issues we're going to have to deal with. That's the world we live in, and that's going to impact our project. So we got to come up with an action plan. So that's what this group, spearheaded by Mr. Whitson and involving all the people you see here, trying to figure out how we're going to deal with this. And Edgar's going to help us as much as he can to maybe get some additional monies, but we can't do any of that until we have a written plan that he can use and we can use to find some pools of money somewhere. So, Mr. Whitson wants to form or has formed a special procurement task force. And our job is to try to expedite the delivery of this treatment plant at the most beneficial and cost-effective price by the timeline it has to be done. That's December of 2024. That's the goal. And our goal is to every 90 days meet with the mayor and the commission and update you where we're at, what we found. Here's what we could do. So you're aware of every step we're taking. And when we need your help, you'll know where we're at. It's critical that we work as a team to do this, because I'd like to say that the prices are going to come down in 6 months. So, hey, let's wait 6 months, but they could be 3 times what they are today. I don't know. I have no clue. So, city manager, myself, city staff is involved. We're going to have minimum quarterly meetings. We put quarterly there, but we're probably going to be meeting, like every 2 weeks, probably on Teams or over the phone or whatever it is, because stuff is so fluid right now. It's difficult. We're going to consult with DEP. I want to know what the interest rates are. I want to know what help they can. We're going to have Edgar helping us, trying to find some other pots of money that we might be able to help us with the construction costs, but they're going to be more than we had anticipated because of the environment that we're in right now. What we want to do is institute a value engineering program. What can we do? It's not a cost reduction, it's value engineering. What can I do to the design we have now to add some value, but not really reduce the cost significantly? Meaning, I don't want to start ripping stuff out. Can I do a little thing over here that saves us a whole bunch of money, but you don't lose the effectiveness of the treatment plant? So we want to start that process. There are a lot of things that we could potentially do. Do I want to do them all? Nope. But I have to do it, or we have to talk about it to give you the best added value that's out there. So step one, let's get the screw press going. We got the money. DEP is going to help us out. That's item number one, and I'm hoping we can get that done in the next week, get at least order, because that starts the process and it saves us some money. I'm worried about cost increases. 2, we need to start on that rate study so we know where we're at. I think he can be done in 4 or 5 weeks. At least he can get you a draft. We can schedule to have him give a presentation, answer all your questions. Then we know strategically where we are financially before we make the decisions on this value engineering program we want to, take on. It's hard to make decisions on money when we don't really know where we're at, or this firm can strategically tell you, hey, we should do X, Y, Z, or hey, you guys are in better shape than you think you are. I'm hoping that's the case. We're going to take measures to expedite the procurement process. So how can we do that? One of the things I'll talk about in just a couple minutes is this. Let's think outside the box. If I took the plans and specifications I have today, then we have to go out through the procurement process one last time with DEP. Then we got to put it out for at least 30 days to bid. Then the bids come in. It'll take probably 30 days to review and go through that. Then it'll take another 90 days through SRF to get the loan, and then the contract can start. That's 6 months. There are alternate delivery methods we could use that could do 2 things. It could get us moving faster, and the faster we move, the less price increases we may see. Okay, so I'm thinking maybe construction management or CMAR, construction management at risk. I'll talk about those in a minute. We might be able to start that process where now the contractor comes in and works with us through the VE process, the value engineering process, to help us. And remember, they know the pricing because they deal with the equipment every single day, and they know the cost of their employees. That's half the battle, is knowing what the costs are for all these skilled laborers. That may be a delivery method that we might want to think about, because the sooner we get started, we offset some of those increased costs that we're going to see. So I'll talk about that in a minute. I think that may be helpful. We got to get that reuse master plan started, because as soon as let's say we could get the plant done in 2 years, it's up and running, everything's great. Now the next problem to start on is, where am I going to put all that water that's going to the intercoastal? We can't wait till the plant's done. We got to start doing that now and get pools of money tapped into so we can start that independently of the wastewater plant. I mean, again, 9 years sounds like a long period of time. It'll be here before you know it, and we got to get out. So that would be helpful. So I listed a few of the value engineering ideas that I want to just go through with you real quick. So the first thing is, right now, I'm going to skip forward a slide. There is a busy picture of part of the treatment plant, and the stuff you see in yellow is the screening system. The screening system sits 20 feet up in the air, so it's up there. And the reason it's up there is we pump the wastewater up there, and then it's going to flow by gravity the rest of the way through the treatment plant, which is what we want it to. It doesn't cost us any money. The problem is those machines weigh, 35, 40,000 pounds with water in them. And you're talking about huge columns of concrete and support to hold them up there. That's the place they need to be. To save some money, let's bring them back down to the ground. So I'll go backwards, like you can see in this picture. They're right at grade. Now the structure is into the ground. It's a different type of screen, but you're maybe talking about $500,000 savings just by doing that. I have no problem doing that to save cost. We'll get the same effect. He'll have a little bit more work to do, but that's one thing we could do, okay? And trust me, he's not going anywhere, okay? But if you look at the picture in the lower left, you can see these rectangular boxes 20 feet up in the air on the left side, and you see all that piping going in and out. If I put it in the ground, pardon me, I'm going to go backwards. If I put it in the ground, all that piping goes away. The hardest problem I have right now in constructing these things is getting all this crazy piping. That piping right there has a ceramic coating on the inside so that all the hydrogen sulfide in the raw wastewater doesn't get converted into sulfuric acid and it eats the pipe away. It's 24 weeks to get the pipe. 24 weeks, and they make it in Alabama. It's not like it's that far away, but 24 weeks. And then notice that piping goes up 20 feet in the air, and there's all these valves up there, and if he needs to close a valve, he's got to get up there and that's all gone. There's a substantial amount of savings we can do. I have no problem doing that. It serves the same function, but we can save some significant money. Those are the things we need to think through, and I want to get those implemented before we bid. Because if I tell you, you can save $500,000, and after we bid it, and do it just like that, contractor says, well, you can save $150,000. Well, yeah, because he's pocketing the rest of the savings. And you never know where the money is in these bids. It's just all lumped. It's crazy that in some of these bids, you'll never get the money, the savings, unless we do it before we bid it and tie the contractor to that number. Okay, I brought this up the last time I was here. The treatment trains that actually treat the wastewater, okay? Johnny's current flows are 0.65 million gallons per day, 650,000 gallons per day. Our anticipated flows in 2041, 19 years from now, is only 0.93 million gallons per day. When this original request for proposals that we won, the request proposal says we need a 2 million gallon per day wastewater plant. And I said, well, that's crazy. You don't need a 2 million gallon per day wastewater plant. You don't even need 1.5 million right now. I think with Mr. Whitson and all the money that we're getting from St. John, some other people, if the flows come down, I don't need to build this giant plant, and that could save you millions of dollars. And if you look at that graphic, there's a line that's a straight line that starts on the left. You can see there's your treatment capacity. And I've got there, you don't need to go from 1 to 1.5 million gallons, which is the line that goes straight up until I think it's 2032, 2031. That's 9 years from now.
So this would be allowing for how many more customers coming on board?
I think you could be down to 550,000 gallons of his wastewater capacity, which is another 450,000 gallons. That's thousands of people coming into Flagler. I mean, if you think...
What we would be doing is trading, because right now the systems that we have is so leaky, it's called I&I.
Right.
We would be, if we can correct our I&I, bring the flows down, we could trade it for growth, which is more cost effective than just continuing to treat whatever comes our way.
Okay. 450,000 gallons per day is 4,500 people. Okay, now, mind you, we could offset that and say, you know what, let's build a 1 million gallon per day plant instead of 1.5, which we have now, and let's do that extra 500,000 upgrade in 2030. Okay, now mind you, it's going to cost you a little bit more money, but it pushes some of it down. Because what if we don't see that growth? What if you stay flat and are only at 750,000 gallons a day, and you got a 1.5 million gallon per day plant and some infrastructure sitting there never being used, rusting away? You'd be stunned how many plants down the east coast of Florida built these giant plants because of these crazy growth projections, and they've never used the other piece of that infrastructure. It's just sitting there rusting away for the last 25 years. I don't want to do that.
Or you build 1 million gallons a day, and if somebody wants to build a massive subdivision, they can bring in the capacity.
Yes, sir. That's exactly right.
Right.
If they want to come in, not only do you do that, you make them take back the reclaim. You make them put dry lines in, and when the reclaim is available, they have to take it. I totally agree. When I first did the presentation in front of the commission to get this job, I'm like, all right, look at this graph, folks, because there's no way you need a 2 million gallon per day plant. This is ridiculous. And it is. Today, I think you can build a 1 million gallon per day plant and offset the 1.5 unless we get some really good price, which I don't think we will. I'd set it off for a while. I think you can get the II down enough to buy yourself some time. All right, so there's my color graphic for your treatment plant. So my next idea is, all right, well, if you look in the lower left, and I don't have a thing to show you, but there's 4 treatment trains. The top one, do I have?
There you go.
Don't worry, I'm not going to blind you.
Yeah, hold on.
It goes away on the TV.
What do you want to put
Okay,
in?
so here's what I'm going to do. Pardon my foot.
Yeah, it's going away on the TV, that's what it
Okay,
is.
so here's the elevated bar screen. I want to move down here to the ground. There's 2 equalization basins here. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 treatment trains. Each one's $500,000. We were originally going to build these 3. That'd give you 3 times a half. There's $1.5 million and a future for it. I think you just need to build these 2 right now. And I'd build that EQ basin. I wouldn't build that. Maybe not that. You're definitely not building that. So you have 2 choices. We can build these 2 trains. I'll give you 1 million gallons per day. And then you could construct this 3rd train, just build the concrete, but don't put the equipment in. That way the concrete's there. In the future, all you'd have to do is buy the equipment and put it down in the tank. Or we'll stub out and epoxy coat the reinforcing steel for this 3rd train, and in the future, somebody's just knocking away really lightweight concrete, the rebar's there, and it's easy to build. I do not want to dowel into an existing tank and watch water come shooting out the hole. That may be feasible because you can save a ton of concrete cost. Concrete's tough to get, rebar's even worse right now. But let's think about maybe stepping it down a little bit to save some cost. Now, doesn't mean we can't build a 3rd one. What I would tell you to do is let's base bid the 2 treatment trains and do an alternate bid for the 3rd one and see what the price comes in at. If it's a reasonable price, you build the 3rd one. If not, you don't build it. Those are the kind of things, unfortunately, we got to think through because of the environment we're in and the uncontrollable cost that are there.
So just to make clear, if we build just 2, and a big development comes in to pick up on it, what Eric said before, and it would not be, we wouldn't have to destroy this whole building, it could be just added on.
Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly right. I mean, just think of,
At
you
their
know,
expense.
That's exactly.
and again, that's the.
I was thinking about the physical.
Impact fees.
Yes.
That's what you're using.
But I was just thinking about physically, is it possible to
Oh, yes,
just add
yes.
it on?
Every cubic yard of the concrete is 5,000 PSI. So what I'll do is I'll stub out pieces of rebar for the next train, and then I'm going to put like 100 PSI concrete that I could actually break with a hammer, so it's easy to get to, and then they'll form up to that. They've already got the rebar. They'll just put water stop in, and they can start building the next tank. You will lose nothing.
Thank you.
No brainer.
Those are some of the ideas. Now, do we want to implement? I'd love to build the 3rd train. It's all about money now and how much we're going to spend. What do we have to spend to meet requirements, and what will we like to have? That's what we got to start thinking about. So here's the next one, and this is interesting. There's the picture on the right is your existing 2 clarifiers. Notice only one's being operated because the other one has hydraulic issues. The pipe going to it was designed too small, so we can't even use it unless it's in an emergency. So you really only have 1 clarifier. Johnny struggles if he has to use the other one. We were going to convert those into digesters. So when the treatment plant treats the wastewater, microbes do that work. Well, we grow too many microbes, so we have to get rid of some of them. We put them in a digester, don't give them any food. They oxidize. We dewater the sludge, we haul it off. So I was going to take those 2 clarifiers, convert them into digesters, because there's Johnny's digester right now. You see that little, maybe up at 10 o'clock, you see that little sludge area, and then you have the Amazon forest all the rest of the way around it. Okay, that used to be the old package plant built in when? 1975. 1975. The structure's good. I think we should think about, not that we want to, but we should think about rehabbing that and not converting the clarifiers into digesters for one reason. If you look at the empty clarifier, you see that white ring that goes all the way around it. That's a fiberglass cover for some structural steel boxes that the water goes into. I got to rip the fiberglass off. I got to rip those boxes that go all the way around the periphery out, and I got to take out all the equipment that you see in the empty one, take it out and send it to the landfill on both of those, and then rehab the concrete on the inside and put new equipment in to digest the sludge. Or I could deforest the, I always call it the Amazon because I think it's hilarious that there's trees growing in there that are, about that big. Clean that out, put some aeration on the bottom, and continue to use that one. Would I prefer to do the clarifiers? You bet. But we need to think about ideas on how to save money. We can do that in the future. Maybe that's a project 5 years down the road. We got to spend money where it's most effective today and save some of these nice things we'd like to do, maybe to another phase. And that's easy enough to do.
And the end product is
It's the same. It'll be the same. We're going to use that structure to do the work. Now, cleaning that out, I'm going to try to do with the screw press money. That was part of the money we talked about. It's not 1.7 million for the screw press, but all those other pieces. I need to drain that thing out and clean it and repair any, I can't repair the concrete until I can see the tank. So we'll get that contractor to clean all that out, refurbish it. We'll put an aeration system on the floor, put a couple of new blowers in, and use that until, let's call it a phase 2 construction in the future. That'll save us some money.
And just to clarify, the Amazon that's sludge in there.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a problem. We're growing. We just need to get rid of this sludge, and it's a huge problem, and it could become an environmental catastrophe.
It's interesting. The Amazon area is an overflow. So when the area that has sludge in it gets too high, it'll overflow into that side, and you will, if you see the sludge go up 3 feet, you'll see all those trees go up 3 feet. They're growing in the sludge, and as the sludge goes up, the trees go up. Sludge goes down, trees goes down.
I was wondering about that when I look out of my backyard.
You can see it.
It's behind my house. It's a good ways over, but.
What type of cost savings is that?
Yes.
What type of cost savings are we looking at with that?
Each one of those clarifiers, I would say, is going to be about $500,000 to $600,000. $600,000 each one. So there's over $1 million there.
Okay.
You probably save $600,000 by retrofitting the one you got. And you start adding up $600,000 2 or 3 times, and now we've saved a couple $1 million. Now the question is, if we put that off for 5 years, that may cost us $4 million then. But we got to figure out what we want to do. We need to break this plan up into, we have to do this. Here's the things we'd like to do. Maybe they have to go to another phase. It's unfortunate, but that's the way it is. The next thing I have at the bottom of that slide is eliminate as much of the project demolition as possible. In a treatment plant, when you're building new infrastructure, you like to knock down the old stuff and get it out of the way because you might need that land later. It costs a lot of money to knock stuff down and then take it to a landfill. In that picture that you see right there, the 2 clarifiers on the right, there's an aluminum roof there and then a concrete structure. None of that is going to be useful in the new treatment plant. We would have knocked all that down. But that could be $60,000 just to knock it down, haul it away, get the pipe out from underground. There's a lot of, do I want it out of there? You bet. Can we afford to do it? I don't know yet. I think we are going to have to additive bid a lot of things and then pick and choose some of the other things that we might want to do and some things we might not be able to do. But we need to strategically do that before we bid this project. All right, I've said this a couple times, expedite the screw press. I think we can get that done. You'll reduce your operating cost and we can get that thing started. I'm going to call that phase 1 construction. You'll see a slide in a minute. I think there's 3 or 4 phases to this job. Phase 1, get the screw press going. It's independent of the treatment plant. Phase 2 is the treatment plant, and phase 3 is the stuff we might not be able to afford in this phase of the wastewater plant. I'm going to call that, we'll shove that out 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And phase 4 of construction is the reclaim system to get out of the intercoastal. So that's phase 1. I think we can get that started here in like I said, this week. Now, here's what I've done to try to save you cost on this. I originally had 2 screw presses turned towards one another. Okay, so when the sludge goes through, it'd be coming to one common point and up into a truck. Okay, I don't want to build the second screw press right now. I want to save a whole bunch of money for you guys. So here's what we're going to do. Here's my thought right now. You can put up to 4 screws in one machine. Each screw dewater sludge. So what I have thought through now is we're going to buy and that's the price for the 350,000. You can put 3 screws in. We're going to put 2 of the 3 screws in today. To increase the treatment plant's capacity by 50%, Johnny just needs to order the 3rd screw, and he can mechanically put it in. They're easy to put in. The rest of the system's all built for it. So a 50% increase in getting sludge through, and all you got to do is, the screw is that long. I don't have to buy another machine. Let's see what growth does over the next 10 years to determine if I have to buy the second one. Again, let's think through this because, the economy may take this funky turn here soon and it may cut a lot of growth off, and I don't want to spend any more money right now than we have to. When the growth comes back, as Mr. Cooley said, let somebody else pay for it. That's sort of the idea right now. Would I have liked to have done that? Sure. We need to be thinking about cost. Here's another one. We have 4 chlorine contact chambers. We have to chlorinate the wastewater to kill pathogens off. And then, unfortunately, when we go to the intercoastal, we have to take chlorine back out. So in that picture, just to the left of that second circle, you can see 4 little tall rectangular channels. Those are chlorine contact chambers. Well, if we're only going to build a 1 MGD plant, I only really need 3 of those trains. 2 of them will operate, 1's a backup. So if one needs to be taken out to be cleaned, he always has 2 to operate. We'll stub the steel out. You can build that in some future phase if you ever get flows above 1 million gallons. Okay, again, thinking through where I can save some money on the plant. And then the last one I had there is, let's think about an alternative delivery method. Okay, that may be something. You are not the only ones in this boat. I'm in this boat, 5 other places where prices are out of control, and we're doing the same thing. 2 of the utilities have elected to go with the alternative delivery method because what they'll do is they'll get a contractor involved right now. And we're at the point where usually you want to be at 60% design completion to get a contractor in if you're going to go CM, construction management, or CMAR, construction management at risk. Then they'll come in and help do the value engineering because they have to build this thing. And then you've got to look at the contractual arrangement. There's sometimes you want to go CMAR and there's sometimes you want to go CM. That may be a method that can help us get started quicker, which helps to expedite and not have future construction costs, or we don't see increases in contract or equipment costs because we're starting much sooner. All right, so let me talk about both these real quick. So construction management risk, I got 2 jobs doing this right now. So with CMAR, a construction manager, similar to a general contractor, and they'll be general contractors, acts as the owner's representative during both the design and construction. We get them to come in and look at what we've got designed and look for areas where we can save some cost. Okay, we're doing the same thing. They'd be a team member for us. Like DBB, design, bid, build, which is what we were going to do. We designed it, we go out, bid it, contractor builds it. The CMAR method separates the design from the building process. So a construction manager comes in, they're involved with this value engineering, trying to change things to save us some money and move stuff off to a future phase. Here's the kick though. Construction management at risk. They're going to give you a price, and it's going to be called a guaranteed maximum price. Okay? So we make any modifications, value engineering that we want to do, and then they're going to come in and say, if we build this, the price is no more. Guaranteed maximum price is $19 million. Now, they're at risk because if it comes in at $20 million, they lose $1 million. They're at risk. But if it comes in at $18 million, then it comes down to the contract. Because if there is no contractual language, and they have a guaranteed maximum price at 19 and they only spend 18 and give you the product, well, they get that extra $1 million. Okay, so there's a share, there's a benefit, there's a risk. And you could put language in there that says anything less than the guaranteed maximum price, we'll split it with you 50-50. So if they can get it done and save you $1 million, they get a $500,000, you get the other $500,000. We don't spend it that way. That's totally different than construction management. Construction management takes the risk out. You're going to hire that same construction manager, but this time what they're going to do is they're going to do the same thing that CMAR does, but they get paid a management fee to do all the work regardless of what the cost is. The idea here is we can get the project started quicker. We have to advertise for one of these construction managers, and you go through the same process. You put an RFQ or an RSQ out, and you select whoever has got the best qualifications to do this. You're going to pay them a management fee, and they're going to manage helping us with value engineering, and they're going to manage the job. Now, mind you, they could build the entire treatment plant because they're going to be general contractors. In that case, what you're going to do is you're going to say, all right, you can build this plant, but everything you build, we need 3 prices for. Your price, another contractor X, and another contractor Y, and whoever is lowest, that's what we're going to go with. And sometimes they'll self-perform the work themselves. Sometimes they'll get a sub to do it. It helps us get started. Time is of the essence right now, because remember, if I got to wait 62 weeks for a generator and he's sitting there and it's the last thing he has to do and he's twiddling his thumbs for 15 weeks, you're still paying him. So the quicker we get started, we might be able to save some significant dollars also. So that's why some of the cities around the state right now are looking at these alternative delivery methods, because everything's out of control. And that may help us to save some money. Okay, I had 3 last ideas here. Number 1, and I really don't want to do this, but if we have to, we have to. Minimize new SCADA system improvements. I put new there because we have no SCADA system at the treatment plant. Johnny does everything manually. Everything. It's only one of 3 treatment plants in the state of your size or larger that is manually operated. Do I want to not do that? Heck no. Because the technology we're going to have there, the plant should run itself, but it has to be done automatically. But again, just like Reclaim, we're starting from 0. So you got to build that infrastructure, and that's not cheap. I talked to you about this before. We want to use owner direct purchase. And we want to purchase equipment, just like the screw press. We're purchasing it ourselves because you don't have to pay sales tax. Contractor does if he buys it. I think you can save $200,000 to $250,000 by you buying the equipment. We're still going to make him responsible to accept it and store it and maintain it and install it and warranty it. The only difference is if the contractor comes in for a pump and here's his purchase order for the pump to pump company X, he's going to bring it into finance and say, all right, put your purchase order on top of it. And by doing that, you don't pay the tax. It still gets delivered to the contractor. He still has to store it. He still has to install it. He still has to maintain it. And he still has to warranty it. But you don't have to pay tax. And when we're talking about, a $15 to $20 million job, there's $5 or $6 million of equipment, and at the tax rate you got now, you're talking $250,000, $300,000. We shouldn't have to pay for that. So I would suggest we do that. Most cities now are doing that. Okay, so the value engineering is going to be interesting. If you decide to go with an alternative delivery method, CMAR or CM, then the city and myself and the contractor work to try to come up with value engineering ideas. Okay? We're going to have to change the plans that we have. Okay? So we're going to have to change the plans he's going to build. We've got a great plan designed for you guys. The problem is, I can't say that we can't afford to build it. I don't know until we get that rate study done. But I think there's some savings by pushing some stuff out if we have to. The only way we'll do that is to go through this value engineering process. So I did a presentation to a commission 3 weeks ago, and one of the questions was, well, why should I pay you X dollars to redo something so we can save money? And I said, I'm going to charge you $100,000, you're going to save $2 million. 100,000 equals 2 million. That was the end of that question. Okay? Because right now it's not, I'd like to build the plant we have. I'm scared to death to see that come in. And like I told you before, My wife's plant went from 69 million to 105. Palm Coast, we designed that plant expansion. It's a completely different type of treatment plant. 18.5 million, low bidder was 25. That's just the reality of where we live today. So I want to fix stuff before we bid it so that we save you money before somebody gives you a price, because you'll never get the money back out once we bid it. And we don't want to rebid it because we don't like the number, because now we're just pushing that out in time and it's going to cost us more and more and more money. We need to get moving on this as soon as we can.
Can I ask you a question about the SCADA system? You know, I know those tend to be, you know, that's a really important system to have, but also we need to make sure that's secure. You said to minimize our SCADA system, so can you just elaborate a little bit more on the minimization of that?
There won't be any security issues. We'll have all the security there. So the question is, how much information comes back from every piece of equipment? We might say, all right, look, the biological treatment system has to have all the SCADA, but this pump, that set of pumps, this over here, we're going to leave out for now. You can add it later. All the stuff you can add in.
Right.
Our problem is we're starting from zero, so you got to put the base infrastructure in. You can add to that later.
Yeah, we don't have anything right now, and having worked emergencies, we've got to have something. We are flying blind. And if anything happened, you're talking about single points of failure. If anything happens to Johnny, he only has one guy who's been there for maybe less than a year. Now, I mean, we got too many eggs in one basket, and we're down to our final bullet. And as much as I would love to cut some stuff out, we need to strategically choose what we cut so that we don't end up, you know, hurting ourselves.
That's sort of the idea, is to make a list of we have to do this. Here's the things we might be able to put off for a while, and then prioritize those. So if we say, all right, look, we can build this and we got an extra $2 million. Now let's go down the priority. We can do blah, 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 and these are gonna have to wait till later. SCADA is important because two things. You don't want a proprietary SCADA system, because then only that manufacturer can work on it. And once they have it in your system, prices go up to do anything. You want a non-proprietary open architecture, because the other thing we want to be able to do is we want to tie every lift station into that SCADA system, because that lift station sends him the wastewater. If one of them goes down, it needs to notify somebody so that if the pumps aren't pumping and the wastewater's coming in, you know it's coming out the top, unless we get somebody there. We don't have any of that now. Now, the other issue that I'm not sure we've addressed, particularly with you, is it is like next to impossible to find an operator today, because nobody wants to go into this industry. So when we lose an operator, it's hard to find one, okay? Because now all of a sudden they're moving around whoever pays the most. Or kids, you know, this is not a field people want to go into. If you have SCADA, it reduces the manpower requirements. So a lot of people now, cities are putting their money into SCADA because they can't find operators. I mean, I can drop down to 2 operators from 4 if I put the SCADA and a couple cameras in them. We're good. And the SCADA system, he can watch it from his house. Not that he would, but he could. And if there's an alarm, it sends it right to his little tablet that he'll have with him. But somebody doesn't have to be there all the time.
Let me give you one quick practical example. We had a lift station go out the other day, several months ago, but it's the one in behind Publix that's way back near that pond back there. The buzzards saw it. They saw the red light, but they didn't tell anybody, and we had an overflow there. Had we have had a SCADA system, we could have told, you know, that there was a problem there, and we could have headed it off and avoided a spill. We have that kind of situation. We have 34 lift stations around the city. We have that kind of potential out there all over the place.
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we were, you know, I know how important they are and how susceptible they are to a cyber attack. So that's why, you know, I know a little bit about.
And that's a great point, but we need to make sure that we get the right system.
Oh, yeah.
And we're just flying, right now, we don't have any.
Right, and that's what I was just concerned with from the value engineering standpoint that we mentioned. That I just want to make sure that we have a pretty robust system.
Oh, yes, sir. Yeah. We may not be able to put all the skin on the bones. Right. We need at least the bones and then some skin, and if we can't afford it all, we'll do the rest of it in another phase. But A lot of utilities will build their SCADA system and then they'll have a back door detached. If you want somebody to see in, you can attach it. Let's say a manufacturer says, well, let me look at some of your data. You can attach it, let them look at it, and then when they're done, that way nobody can.
Same way you do on a desk, like on your computer, for IT help.
Yes, that's exactly right. We need to have that impacted in our system so we don't have those issues. But you're right. We don't want anybody. Now, not that somebody's going to do it to the wastewater plant. I'm more worried about a water plant. Okay, but it's the same architecture, so we need to do it the same everywhere, so it's your standard.
I had a question about the CMAR and CM. Can you just briefly explain each of those again, and then your opinion, which would you advise for us?
Okay, so construction management, CM. You're going to put an RFQ out. You'll have construction firms come in and send in their submittals. You'll evaluate those and determine who the best construction manager is. Now, it'll be contractors that build treatment plants. Okay, their job is now, they're part of the final part of the design with us. And their job is to help look at value engineering ideas, little ways that we can do some things maybe because the cost of this pipe is a little bit less than the cost of this pipe, to help us, not that we're decreasing the quality, but hey, I can't get that for 25 weeks, but if we can go to this grade, I can get it there next week, that kind of thing. You're going to pay them a management cost. It doesn't matter if this plant comes in at $18 or $20 million. They get a management fee for the work that they are doing. Okay? Now, that construction manager can also build the plant. But we have to write up in our scope that if they're going to self-perform, let's say they're going to pour the concrete themselves, that they have to be one of the bidders. So you have to have 3 bids to put that concrete in. If they're the lowest of those 3, great, do it. If company Y is lower, they're the ones that are going to do it. They still get their management fee, cover their overhead, some of the work they do, and their profit. So it doesn't matter what the price comes in, they're going to get their fee. They can self-perform. Construction.
And Mayor, on this different project, of course, but the last one, that type of contract that I negotiated, the management fee was 8.5%, just to give you a feel.
Okay.
Now, CMAR, construction management at risk. Remember, the contractor in CM has no risk. He's getting paid a management fee. He can still build some of the infrastructure. If you go to CMAR, then he's going to come in and say, all right, I will build this plant after we've done some value engineering for $20 million. If it comes in at $21 million, he loses $1 million because you have a guaranteed price. Now, I will guarantee you this. If he's getting to the point where he knows he's going to lose money, he's going to start cutting corners. Okay? That's the problem. Okay? But if he can build it for $18 million and he told you your guaranteed maximum price is 20, then we got to make sure we have language in there that says, if you can do it for less than 20, we'll split it with you, or you get 25% or 50%. Otherwise, he gets the whole $2 million because you're going to pay 20. That's your maximum price. That's his risk. Going over, maybe he comes in under. And I will tell you, if you do CMAR, I can guarantee you they'll get it done fast because they're going to try to get that cost down as low as possible, because every bit below the GMP and what you're going to pay, that's all pure profit. They don't have to do any work other than be expeditious as possible. So most CMAR contracts have a cost-sharing formula. For every dollar you're below the CMAR, we'll split it with you 50-50 or 40-60 or whatever it is. So you don't just give them a whole bunch of money for just being expeditious.
Then who's your eyes to make sure that they don't cut the corners and really blow the project, essentially?
Okay, so as part of the construction process, I will be there in the construction phase. I'll have inspectors that are watching them like a hawk.
Okay.
And you'd be surprised when you have somebody watching them, they won't cut corners that way. But yeah, we've got to have that. That's part of the SRF loan. That money is already allotted in the SRF loan for construction inspection, which I'll do to make sure, whichever method we use, that you're getting what you paid for and it's built right where it's supposed to be built.
And if we were to use the CMAR method, we would work as a team, and that would be, we'd be on it. I mean, because that would be part of how we would operate, is to make sure that we would want that job to come in below what they estimated it to come in.
I mean, I'm going to have somebody out there 8 hours a day, 5 days a week while they're building, watching them. They'll be making sure as-built are being done, everything's being put in right. If something's not right, we stop them before it gets too far down the line. We're ripping stuff out.
I'll be there to watch them too.
Okay.
Yeah, we're going to have to do that. We have to do that. Yes, you're exactly right. So, I mean, there's things we can do to try to get within where we want to be, but we need to know where we're at to start. Okay? So I've sort of broken my last couple slides up. I've got 4 phases construction for this project now. So phase 1, construct the dewatering job now. Okay? We got to get rid of those sand drying beds. We got the money from DEP. It's a 50-50 match. I want to get that started now. We're going to call that phase 1 construction. That has nothing to do with the wastewater plant. That's just the dewatering. Okay? Because that's a pretty simple one. Phase 2, build the treatment plant. Now, mind you, there's what we would have to build. How much of that we build, not sure yet, but we got to get rid of some of that failing, obsolete, obsolescent equipment. That would be phase 2. Now, how much? Unknown. Phase 3 says, all right, if we decide to only build a 1 MGD plant and we put some stuff off to a future phase, here's some things we could do. We don't build the second EQ basin. Trains 3 and 4 maybe in another phase. There's some pumps we won't have to put in. That 4th chlorine contact chamber might be able to be pushed out. And that second screw press, let's hold off on that. Let's see what growth does over the next 5, 6, 7 years. Phase 3 is to put all that stuff back in because all of a sudden your growth has gone up a lot more than we thought. Phase 4, that's the reclaim system. Reclaim water, distribution, and disposal improvements. So to be able, let's assume we can create reclaimed water. We get rid of the salt. So now you got to have a tank out there to put the reclaimed in to be able to pump from. I had never thought about putting a tank on your treatment plant site because I'm building you at least 2 new treatment trains. So now the existing treatment train out there, which is a big oval if you've ever seen it, is just going to sit there. I don't want to demolish it because it's a big storage tank. All I got to do is put a cover over the top of it, and it's a 1 million gallon storage tank. Let's reuse the existing infrastructure. Not that we couldn't go get money from St. John's to put a reclaim tank in, but we already have a tank, let's use it. Okay, I have to put a pumping station in now to pump to wherever we're going to pump this stuff to. That would be one thing we'd do. Then you got to put the distribution system in. Pipes got to go in the ground. Valves got to go in. You got to have skated to it to be able to know where. You got to be able to do water balance. Okay. 3, then we've got to put in the distribution site development. Okay, so let's say we go to the golf course. Who's going to, we got to be able to tie into the golf course, or we got to be able to tie into wherever we're going to go. That takes some dollars to do that. And then last but not least is now you got to come up with a billing platform to bill people because you don't have that either. You're billing water and sewer rates. Now the question then becomes is how much you going to charge these people? Okay, I had the second reclaim system in the state back in 1990. We gave reclaimed water away. Okay, that was the idea. Is we got so much reclaim, we're just going to give it away. Now it's a commodity and it's a revenue stream. We got a ways to go to get there. And like I said, we got to look at the low-hanging fruit first. His treatment plant, I want to irrigate the you-know-what out of it just to get water out of there until you can develop customers that are going to pay. And like I said, the golf course is a huge target, but it's so far away that it's going to be hard to get to. And I actually sat on A1A staring at the golf course, and I kept looking to the south. I'm like, that's Gamble Rogers State Park. How can I get water? And I'm looking at all of the vegetation there, and I'm watching the salt spray just flying off of the beach onto it. I'm like, well, if it can take salt water, I should be able, if I could get to the golf course, I'm going to irrigate that thing. I'm just going to have a gun just shooting water on top of it because it gets water all the way along, and it's salt water. We might be able to work with the state until we develop a large enough customer base to be able to make it profitable to where we're using. That helps us get out of the intercoastal. You got to look for things like that. In fact, I've done this up in Maine before. We got a lot of open space where the gardens is going. They're only putting a small piece in, but the guy owns all that property. Why don't we work with them to try to put in some gigantic irrigation guns and just start irrigating the woods until he develops more, and we can convert that into irrigation of grass because we just got to get it out of the intercoastal. Now you're starting to put water on the trees and the scrubs and all that kind of stuff. We got to get out of the intercoastal. That might be one way we could work with a developer. There's other things we could do. Maybe we find some area we can put some rapid infiltration basins in. It's not going to be over on this side. You know, maybe we work with Palm Coast or Bunnell or some other interlocal agreement. Those are the things we need to investigate and then drill down on and say, okay, this is the highest priority, then this one, then this one, then this one, so that we and Edgar can go out and try to find pots of money to have somebody help us pay for it. That's sort of where we have to go. There's a lot of things we got to do, and there's not a lot of time because that 9-year window seems like a lot until you look at all the work we got to do. The last place I want to park reclaimed water right now is on people's homes. Because if you start to drive around, and you guys know this area much better than I do, they have all these little small green areas, and they're not going to spend money to water the grass. They never have. They're not going to. You need to find big home properties that are going to do that. So we got a lot of work to do. Reclaim water, getting out of the intercoastal. Those are the two big things that we have to do. With that, I'm dropping the mic. I'm here to answer any questions you have.
One of the questions I have, and it has to do with our citizens and our customers. You know, and of course, you know, one of the things that they're asking and the questions that are going to be coming up is how much it's going to cost them. And I guess that goes back to the rate fees and rate studies that we're doing here. So in anticipation of that, how do we respond to that?
Okay, so if I can get the rate study completed in the next 4 to 5 weeks,
okay,
I will have that answer for you. Now, what he will go through the entire rate study with you in detail, and it will tell you what your cost, if we spend 15.4 or we spend 20 or 17, whatever it is, he'll tell you what that rate's going to be, and then he'll tell you the rates all around you within a 50-mile radius to see how you compare to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because the first thing that, you know, somebody's going to go is, well, you know, people in Bunnell are paying a heck of a lot less, or people in Palm Coast are paying a heck of a lot less. Well, depends how big your database is. If Palm Coast has got a huge customer base, so they pay a lot less because there's more.
Exactly.
But I need to know that number for you guys to be able to answer those questions, and I just don't feel comfortable yet, particularly after what happened in Bunnell and 2 other facilities where, you know, they did all these crazy rate increases and they didn't have to. I don't want to do that.
Okay, and that's why I asked that question, because, you know,
That's a great
we
question.
want to be honest with our
Yes, sir.
with our customers, our citizens, because that is important, and we don't want to be in the same boat that we were in when the water rates went up.
And, you know, if we work through maybe one of the alternative methods, we'll have that contractor in working with us, and, you know, they're going to have a better handle on the daily cost changes than any of us. But then we'll know where the cost is going to be, and we can now say, all right, if it's this, then here's what the rate, the rate's going to be to treat the wastewater.
Yeah, and I might just add, in fairness, Chairman, what we're talking about here is the impact of the new wastewater plant on the rates. You still have to operate what we have, and chemical costs are going up, labor costs are going up. So there's the natural inflation that we're actually looking at the last 15 to 20 years of data right now in terms of our new budget proposals. And that's just ongoing operations, has nothing to do with what he's talking about here. So I just wanted to kind of separate.
Sure. Well, I think it's important because, you know, I think most people anticipate or they know that there's going to be some increases. But, you know, some people are going to push back regardless. But, you know, the fact is, this is the way it is. I mean, this is the way of life. And not to be gross, but everyone makes sure that when they push that handle down, things disappear. you know?
Bingo.
And you have to pay for it one way or the other. So I think we need to talk about this to our citizens and let them know that this is what's coming. We're not going to be as fair as we can, but it is a cost that we actually have to realize this could be there.
And I think it's important that we do the value engineering, because then it can show that you guys are looking at other options to save money and maybe push some of the stuff up to some future year.
All right, as transparent as we can.
Yes, sir.
Commissioner?
Ben, during our last discussion, you did not bring up a rate study, so I believe this is the first we're hearing of it. Is that true?
Yes.
Okay. And once again, how is this going to be paid for? We have some money.
Okay, so we had to do a capital finance plan to get the SRF loan. I had like $15,000 in there to do that. He only spent 10, so I have 5. It's going to cost 20 to do the full rate study. So I need another 15, but again, he didn't use all the money, so that's a good start. So I've got him started on it already, because the quicker I can get you the information, then we can start making better decisions on how much do we want to build, how much do we want to push off. So I'm hoping he can be done in the next 4 to 5 weeks. I just need to get the additional 15,000 to get him to finish, to let you know where you're at.
Commissioner? Any other questions?
Just one other.
Thank you, Ben. That you can get me to understand what you've been talking about. I just find you amazing.
Well, somebody told me last week, I'm number 1 and number 2. I don't know what that means, but okay.
Mr. Cooley, on that note.
See, he's smiling now. That's a good thing.
So we have some things that, are you wanting consensus on? There's a couple bullets that sounds like we need to give you now.
Now would be good, but let me also just share just a quick thing. In terms of the impact fees, we also have a consultant looking at our impact fees for water, wastewater, because those are impact fees that are in place, separate from this.
Correct.
Okay, and then we are also looking at police, fire, recreational impact fees, which are impact fees we don't even have. So that study is ongoing, and that will come back to you in the next few weeks. And then this impact fee study is specifically tied to the impact of the capital side of the equation in the wastewater plant.
Yeah, and the impact fee study you're doing now will dovetail in what my guy will be doing.
We can
That's
get
just one
these
thing he
things
doesn't have
done
to do.
before the legislators change everything that,
That would be good, yeah.
Well, I heard
and we're going to be depending on you to delay them one way or the other.
So I heard that you're wanting a consensus on the rate study and the screw press. Those are the two
Those are the
takeaways
two
that I
hot items, yes.
Yes and yes.
Okay. We need to open that for public comment first.
You should, but on the screw press, what direction are you looking for tonight? Are you looking for permission to put that on an agenda and bring that to them for the piggyback?
Yes.
Okay, so you're not actually asking for a go-ahead to piggyback tonight, you're asking for their consensus to see it on the next agenda.
Right, and if it's okay with them, could I add it Thursday?
Amend it?
Is that enough time, Drew? That'll fly.
You have the Sanford contract, so I mean, it's just a piggyback, so it's just a matter of putting it onto your agenda. If it's enough time for you to review it, then it's enough time, but that's really your call to make,
Sure.
not ours.
Yeah,
No, that's not a problem.
Okay, so that would work for that piggyback for Thursday, and then the rate study.
Do we need the rate study on the agenda too? Or is that even needed? It's
You're,
15,000.
but it's 15,000, you're gonna need a budget amendment for it.
Well, depends on how, is that in the SRF loan or the SRF planning, which was already budgeted? See what I'm saying?
There's nothing left. There's like $8,000 left in the SRF loan
Okay,
for design. We could expedite and use half of that. I mean, that 8,000, I believe, is another 7,000 to 8,000.
yeah. Well, I think the answer is yes, then,
Well,
because it looks
doesn't
like
that
we're
fall
out.
within the, you could spend 20,000 without?
Yes, my authority is 20,000, but the issue
Still needs a
becomes a budget issue. But, okay, here's another caveat here. We usually do a budget amendment by quarters, and there's another one coming in a few months. So if you understood that that's coming, you could authorize me now, or like Drew said, you can go through the formal process. Your call.
Do you have a recommendation, Drew?
If you're looking to get it done fast, I'd do it that way. Go ahead and authorize the expenditure and understand that you're going to have to amend the budget to contemplate it, to capture it. I mean, there's probably money there's money there to find. It's a matter of having it in the right line item.
Correct.
Get the consensus?
I'm good.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you have consensus to do that? Move forward with that option.
By the time you're actually spending those dollars, you have your budget amendment.
Yeah. So, Rhonda, I'm talking, let's see, it's June now. We usually bring a budget amendment together in August, September. So That would be the time frame, just to be clear.
But it will come through as a formal budget
Yes, ma'am.
amendment?
Okay.
Yes.
It'll be a resolution, okay.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Okay?
Yep.
All right.
And then I will get something to William to look at for the reuse plan. We got to get that moving so that Edgar can help us to try to find pots of money for that reuse system. Again, that's going to take a lot of time and effort to get done, because if you decide to irrigate a park and you don't own that park, you don't own the one across the street over here, then you've got to go through and work with the county to be able to develop it. That could take time too. So that's why a lot of these things, and if you're running a line somewhere, you may have to get an easement. We got to get started on some of that so that once we have the reclaimed, it's going somewhere and we're out of the intercoastal.
I think Edgar wants to say something.
I was going to speak, but I'll give you the Edgar Fernandez with Anfield Consulting. The grant programs and the budget, different phases. So the alternative water supply budget, which is where we're going to target, one of the targets is 50 million this year. They just got signed last week. That goes through a process. So your district in January every year does their cost sharing, does your ready funding, everything at once, because that way they can look at the entire need for this region. They separate it in silos. So there's Springs, there's alternative water supply, ready, and then the other projects. They will create a priority list. Then that goes to Tallahassee. Then they decide winners and losers from the 5 districts. So this year we have 50 million that's been approved. In January, we start the next cycle. So the sooner we can get ahead on what we want to do this, then we get into that cycle, just like the ready, and then we can go after that process. So it's going to take, like now we're in the middle of about to award the money that just got approved July 1st. So we got to get ahead for January for alternative water supply. And we've been talking a lot about vulnerability assessments and everything. This is all tied together, because what he's pointed out on the infiltrations, getting into the sewer plants and all that, everything and anything that affects our infrastructure has to be in that assessment. So then allows us to go get grant dollars or loan money. It needs to be in that assessment to be identified, because at the end of the day, they're going to do a statewide assessment. That's what their goal is, so they could identify. That's why the manager is like saying, now I got to do a 20-year plan. They want to know what our needs are, what's out there, so they can then start finding money themselves. Because the reason why things have been delayed this last year is because they've been dependent on a lot of the federal money coming down. So that's why the resiliency assessment grant took so long this year, because they were waiting for the federal dollars to come down. Not everybody got their ARPA money up front. They got half. So the state was in the same position. And so I just want to bring up the timing, why it's important. And the two things, phasing, it's not a bad thing. We've been doing it already. We also got $500,000 for the city, and that's how we got the generator for the plant, the $500,000. That was a few years ago. So the state likes phasing because now they got skin in the game, return on investment. And then the second thing is procurement is long, dragging process. CMAR is what I'm seeing now a lot around the state. I'm building 2 water plants in Polk. They're going after federal money and they're using CMAR because it's the procurement time frame and also the value engineering. But phasing is not a bad thing, because the state likes it, because they're going to give you all the money today. You're not going to be able to spend $50 million if I give it to you today. So they like to see the phasing. So you'll have them hooked. So, yes, ma'am.
Well, I have a question for everyone. So there was still when do we make the decision if we're going to use the alternative delivery method of CMAR or CM? And also for the decision of CPH doing a redraft of the cutback of the project? When is that in our phase?
Basically, you can authorize tonight for me to initiate this special task force and do that. And then we would come back with a recommendation. But my thoughts at the moment is to do CMAR.
I agreed.
And I'm agreeing with that too.
I don't think you can really do any of that until you get your rate study back,
Well,
because you don't know what you can afford.
That's correct,
Yeah.
but in terms of which way I'm leaning,
which
you know,
sounds like a better way of doing
yeah.
it.
So again, tonight, if you're in agreement with my memo, it's basically saying, okay, you're liking what you hear, I can go ahead and initiate this process And then, we'll bring you back the official recommendation once we have more information. But
After your task force meets.
yes, ma'am. And basically, right now, going in, I'm kind of leaning one way, but let's get it going and see what happens.
So you want our, by consensus, that you, Joe?
That was all in the memo that was.
Yeah.
I think really more what he's looking for is make sure that you don't have any issues with it. I don't think, because it's really an executive
That's
task
what I
force, not a
thought.
commission-created task force, so we don't want to be sunshine. So it's just like they're reporting to him, and then he's making a final recommendation to you as executive.
Questions?
And that also included the CPH doing the second redraft, okay.
Let me throw something in real quick. It's related to what you're saying. If you're going to go CMAR, first you have to write an RSQ, request for qualifications. That'll take a couple of weeks to put that together. Then it's got to go on the street for 30 days. Then any contractors will then send you a submittal. And then it'll probably take you a couple of weeks to review those. Then you're going to have to do interviews, and then you're going to pick one. You're talking 3 months. So getting the rate study done, you'll have that done far in advance of getting somebody in for CMAR. But if we're going to go that route, the sooner the better, because of that time it takes to procure that person and get them to the table. It'll take you 3 months.
Okay.
But wouldn't it take time to go with just the CR? You'd still have to,
Same thing.
yeah,
Same-
okay, so
same
that's
thing.
not a reason to do one or the other.
No, ma'am. Again, it's the process outlined in the memo that I'm really looking
Yeah.
for.
Go forth and have a task force.
Okay,
Maverick.
what I'll do is, we're just going to open it up for public comment, if there's anyone that wants to make comments on this.
Sally Brown from Sugar Mill Plantation. I wouldn't disappoint you guys. Of course, I have a comment. My memo to you all, and I'm trying to have this divided so you understand that there are two separate projects. When I approached Mr. Smith and Mr. Whitson after the meeting, asking about the Water Wars contractual requirement that the builder designs, pays for, and then deeds over to the city for maintenance of the reclaimed water facility. These gentlemen, I cannot make a decision as to why the answer was what I was given, but my question was not addressed. They were now tonight I understand, they were talking the wastewater facility, which had started before. You have a reclaimed facility that contractually by the Water Wars agreement is going to be paid for entirely by the developer. So I hope you've understood that you have two facilities. We're talking funding and building as a totally different concept rather than the answer that I was given in March, which related not to the reclaimed water requirement, but was to the wastewater facility that you all are doing.
I don't know if I understand the comment.
My comment is on March 24th, when I asked why the city was not going to be requiring the developer to design and build and deed to the city for maintenance the reclaimed water facility that is designated in the Water War settlement. Is that clear, that that was my question?
I understand the question. I think there may be a divide. I'm sorry, is it okay?
Sure, go ahead.
So when you say developer pays for, and I think the question in March, I think the answer was really focused on the fact that developer pays for it either way. Because as it is right now, developer pays impact fees, and if developer spends money on plant, dollar for dollar credit against those impact fees.
I understand what you're saying.
Let me finish.
Yes, sir.
Net neutral. What you're looking at here, the city, not my decision to make, but I think on the engineering side, the thought that's gone into this is those dollars are worth more by working it into the overall project, economies of scale, that actually we can stretch those dollars further by incorporating it into this plan than if developer builds a standalone facility, his design, city has no control over how well it ties in with everything else. So they're not truly distinct.
The city participated in the water war settlement, and the specifications are included in the water war settlement. My issue is if you want to deviate, because that was done in 2014, then whatever negotiations you do with the contract, the developer, that can be built in to those negotiations. My concern is, and the questions are right here, how much is it going to cost you? Where are you going to get the money? When are the impact fees coming in to repay it? And how are you getting paying for the carrying charges of the money that you borrow? You have a guaranteed bird in your hand, as opposed to the if comes later. And you can negotiate what you have in today's world and your requirements, but why are you not looking at the money that is coming from the developer? Because the impact fees, and I understand them, you have not said what the impact fees are. You have not said at what point you are going to obtain those impact fees, and how many of the impact fees do you need to pay for this multi-million-dollar facility and the carrying charges during this time?
If I may take a stab at this, and then I'll let Drew clean it up. Since the water wars occurred, you're talking about a facility that would benefit only that developer, because that developer would build it and pay for it. Since that occurred, the state of Florida has passed a law that says we have to get out of the intercoastal. Everybody. So that's changed the game. And while it's nice that there may be a water war settlement that provided for a standalone facility paid for by the developer, we have found a way to incorporate whatever contributions they care to make and will make to the facility that will help us comply with the law to get out of the intercoastal. All the wastewater has to get out, not just the developer's wastewater. So this has to do with the scenario changing versus when that occurred.
I don't know. I have not researched as to when the state made the decision that we have to get out of the intercoastal.
And just something you said earlier, the water war settlement is much older than 2014. I don't remember. It predates me by a chunk.
Well, like about 07 or 8.
2006.
So that was definitely well after the water war settlement agreement. As to when impact fees are paid, they're paid basically when building permits are issued now. We can't require it to be paid before, but we can say you're not building until you pay your impact fees. And I don't remember the total value. I want to say, was it 1.5? Does that sound right to you? Mm-hmm. But again, impact fees, as well as any requirements made of a developer, it can only be, like Mr. Whitson said, for their impact. If you make a developer pay for everybody else's impact, court's going to say, nope, developer doesn't have to do anything.
All right, I'm only going by the date of the agreement document that I pulled that had been filed, and that is 2014.
Okay.
And I do not have a professional understanding as to how much is coming and would be handled by that plant. So I can't make a judgment at this time because I don't have that information. However, I do believe it is with the thought of greater than just that development.
And that's the point that we were both making. If there's a requirement that a developer contribute more to cover his impact than what that impact is, you run the risk of getting nothing at all.
Okay, we can take this up.
Well, but not to get into the weeds on it, but I think that's an important point, both for everybody to hear, that when we're talking negotiations with developer, we think of it as whatever developer is willing to pay. Edgar can tell you, the state does not believe in whatever developer is willing to pay. State is dollar for dollar. What is developer's cost, or what is cost of impact? That's what developer's going to pay.
And they've gotten harder and harder.
And this is why, because of this, because there are places that squeeze.
Unless the developer offers, which, like, for instance, with the fire truck, we had an offer for that.
Yes, we accept.
Yep.
Okay, any other comments?
Good evening. My name is Sandra Netubik, and I live on Pine Tree Street in Flagler Beach. I concur with Sally because I have the same documentation and have been to all of the meetings as she has been, and I know that what she is telling you and the dates is the dates that I have also. The other thing that I'm concerned about is we seem to be going in directions instead of the direction with the waste and the water, what really is the priority for Flagler Beach. What we really need to do, the water and the water waste. I understand about the reclaim, that it has to be out of the intercoastal. I understand that. The other thing that I really would like to know, and this I may be out of, shouldn't ask this, but at one time Flagler Beach was drilling for water wells. We had 2 dry wells. Was that ever done? I mean, I'm just asking. We're talking about water, reclaimed water, wastewater. I'm just wondering, was the wells ever drilled that was supposed to have been done for water? One was dry and one had salt water in it. And my understanding, they was to be 2 new wells drilled for the city of Flagler Beach. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Whitson.
Yeah. We have something that's issued by the St. Johns River Water Management District, which is the state jurisdiction responsible for our water operations. It's called a CUP. It's called a Consumptive Use Permit. And we have to live within that allocation of groundwater. And drilling wells that's just ancient technology. They really don't like for individual jurisdictions to drill wells. We have right now 15 wells, probably about 9 or 10 of them active, and 1 more in the planning stages. Those wells, the majority of them are out near the airport. So what I'd like to do is invite these ladies out to the wastewater treatment plant to actually see what we're talking about, because that water that exits the plant is what has to be eliminated from the intercoastal. And it's everybody's water, everybody's wastewater. It's cleaned up to the point where it's as clear, crystal clear as a bottled water that you're drinking out of right now. But it's still too salty per the standards of the DEP to enter that intercoastal waterway. So that's what we're talking about, improving to the point where we can distribute it as a product, to recharge the aquifer, to make sure that our cup grows, to make sure that we can continue to withdraw groundwater for drinking. It's a cycle. I wish people could just see the whole thing, the way it all fits together. And it's very complicated. It's hard to grasp. So I can appreciate sitting in the audience and trying to understand these things. And I would just like to invite more citizens to come out and to see the end product and see what we're trying to do. It's different than a developer paying for a plant to deal with the impacts that they cause. We're talking about something that not only has to deal with that, but everybody else's impact to the system.
But I think to answer Sandra's question, we had to shut down a couple of wells.
Yeah.
Of those 15, some of them have been shut down. It sounds like we have a lot of wells, but some have been shut down for a
Yes.
very long time. And in more recent time, there were 2 we had to shut down, and we have
Yes, and we also have to rotate them because of the cone of influence that that St. John's allows us to tolerate in the pumping. Because they're very persnickety about how much groundwater we withdraw. Right now, I asked the plant the other day what the daily flow was, and it's around 650 to 750,000 gallons a day in drinking water.
Okay.
I take great offense, Mr. Whitson, to your condescending
Sally,
conclusion that I know nothing about wastewater, and I have no desire to look at the plant.
Ms. Ock?
I am a SME.
Sally, you don't have any more comments right now. It's only one. Thanks.
Just wondering, as part of the workshop, so you have a 20-year permit. Part of that permit, you have a set number of water you can draw per year. The districts evaluate your permits every 5 to 10 years on the minimum flow and levels. It's starting to pick up in North Florida, so the water is not being used. The district in Central Florida just started last year, are looking at utilities that are underutilizing their water. So they'll come back, and when it's time to renew your permit, they may take water away from you also. But in your permit, if you look at your 20-year permit, you have a requirement to do reuse water in your permit. I was at a utility, I had 300 gallons a day. Anything above and beyond that, I had to create desal, RO. I had to create new water sources, and your number is set. But you have to remember, the part of the assessment, the vulnerability assessment, we're looking at also how to protect that groundwater from the saltwater intrusion. So hopefully we have to build some buffers to protect those wells, the few that we have left, from that infiltration. So the district's constantly looking at that. It's starting right now in Jacksonville, St. John's, Clay, and they're working down the coast looking at the influences of those wells, and you're drawing away from other users at the same time. So just remember that in your permits, the reuse is a requirement that you have to try and make an effort to do.
Okay.
And we also can't use, if it's $1 million a day, if the cup is $1 million, $1 million gallons a day, I wish it was $1 million. We can't, there's a percentage, I forget, is it 90%? There's some cutoff. We can't use the whole 1 million gallons a day. Yeah.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, seeing none, we bring it back to the board.
Well, I think you have everything you need.
I just need to make sure I've got this clear. So I recorded a consensus for Mr. Whitson to move forward with forming the executive task force, and the other was for me to amend the agenda to include the contract for, starts with an R.
Rate study or the screw
Rate
press?
study? Or
No, the name of the company.
Raftellus.
Raftellus. So are you going to send me information on that? Because
I will.
But on the task force, there wasn't a consensus sought. I think it was just here for questions or any issues, and there were none raised. So it wasn't a consensus that was being sought on that. That's the manager's decision. He was just informing the commission and making sure there were no questions or concerns that they had about it.
Okay, you have everything, Penny?
Did we cover the screw press?
Did you get the screw press?
Well, that,
You got the rate study.
the rates.
They authorized to go, there was a consensus to go ahead and move forward with the order, the screw press order.
Of all this stuff, because you're going to have to send me quite a bit for that. So,
Not a problem.
either that, or I'll contact the clerk in Sanford and get it from her, if you give me that bid number.
I'll forward you what I forwarded Mr. Whitson today, and you'll have everything you need.
Drew, does screw press need to go on agenda as a separate item?
That, I don't think that.
Putting the order in, no, but eventually it's going to be in your budget amendment process for the
Right, but we
money.
can move forward. We gave
You had a
permission
consensus,
to
go ahead and
move
start the
forward.
process of getting the order in, yes.
So the rate study, I believe we have enough to get that on for Thursday, but I don't think they'll be ready for this
get you the information, and then you can put it on whenever you deem necessary, but I'll get you that stuff tonight.
Any other comments? Questions? Motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Also, too, before we adjourn, somebody dropped something on the aisleway there. I don't know what that is.
Okay, we're adjourned.